And if you really want to see the beauty of basketball, the team game is even more beautiful than just being able to dream and play one-on-one or just walk by yourself in the yard. And so it's truly a team game, and everyone plays a specific role. And I just always enjoyed that as a kid, right?
Welcome everyone again to another episode of Beyond the Athlete podcast, presented by Basketball Nation. My name is Coach David, as you all know, and today we have another special guest. And like I always say, all our guests are very special to us because they're going to bring a lot of insights, a lot of information, a lot of fun, a lot of entertainment to our conversation. And the way we speak to our guests is pretty much flowing, conversational, so you don't get bored. But we would love for you to, however, watch through this whole episode, subscribe, like, comment, and in your comments also give us feedback how we can improve. Who would you like to see on this podcast as well? But not to take too much of your time, our very special guest today, he told me to call him PRC, but I actually want to say his full name, which is Peter Robert Casey, investor at JDS Sports. He does a lot of other things as well, and I could list them out, but I actually want him to speak about that himself. So, Peter, great to have you on the podcast today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Good. Thank you. I know we were meant to meet a few weeks back. I know you had a few things to sort out. By the way, I'm loving your background as well. It's given me a lot of inspiration for my own background next time. Looks really pretty cool. So yeah, I just wanted to start off obviously I've just given like sort of like a basic from my end, from my perspective of who you are and what you do, but it would be great to kind of hear from you who you are, what you do as well.
Yeah, I could give you the quick version. Peter Robert Casey, as you said, most people do call me PRC for simplicity. And as you mentioned, I'm an investor at JDS Sports. JDS are the initials of our chairman, Joe Sandberg. And what we do is we invest mostly in early stage startup companies. We do that through a mixture of private equity and venture capital. And so 6 years ago, we acquired Slam, the great legacy basketball magazine. And it was a great asset, just never really had the capital to reinvent itself. So we bought Slam in August of 2017 and really repositioned the business and the brand as a modern media and lifestyle brand. And subsequent to that, we launched JDS Sports, which is investing in startups that are complementary to Slam, that plug into Slam's growth plans. And on the inverse, we give those startups a compelling use case with a trusted brand in Slam. So our portfolio right now sits at about just above 30 companies, 30 investments, all around sports tech, sports media, a couple of CPGs and the like.
Amazing. That sounds amazing. And you mentioned Slam. Everyone knows Slam. And I read their magazines. I've been reading them for years. Funny enough, I actually sometimes speak to Dennis Page on Instagram as well. Especially the NBA season last year, we were going back and forth around what was going on in the league. So it was quite interesting to get to actually know a bit of him as well, which is great. But
he's the creator. He's the creator.
Yes, big time creator. So how did you get into this world of business and investing? What was your, it'd be good to kind of take it a bit back, your childhood, growing up, family, and then maybe going into education, if you did go into education, and kind of see that whole process really.
Yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, on the southeast end of Brooklyn, very much a working class neighborhood. I come from 3 generations of civil servants, all the way until my family immigrated here from Ireland, at least on my father's side. And, unfortunately in childhood, I actually lost my sister when I was 9 years old. She was about to be 10. It was just an abrupt, sudden loss. She died of myocarditis, basically a viral infection of the heart. And so through God's grace, he gave me the gift of basketball, which became sort of like a coping mechanism and an outlet for me to channel some of that pain as a kid. And I fell in love with it. Baseball was probably my first love. It was a team sport, but I was very fortunate in Brooklyn to have a very small patch of asphalt in our yard and just fell in love with basketball, mainly, like I mentioned, as an escape initially. Started going to basketball camps, through my adolescence, played 3 years of varsity basketball in high school, was recruited mostly by Division III schools, which someone should have told me at that point I should just hang it up and focus on the business side of the game. But I was a stubborn, Irish American kid. So I played 1 year of Division III basketball in college. Then I quit basketball, kind of went away from the game. And when I graduated college, my first job was in higher education on the student affairs side. And my job there was essentially at Columbia University to build community in the very brick and mortar sense with graduate students who were full-time teachers who were coming to school at night, and also principals of middle and high schools. And so I did that for 5 years. And along the way, I felt this tug back to my love for hoops. And I didn't really know what to do. This was during the financial crisis, by the way. Everyone in America and mostly around the world was losing their jobs. And I was fortunate enough to have a safe, cushy job there. And I started experimenting with these new and shiny tools called social media. This is 2007, 8 now. And I was interested in working in the business of basketball, but I didn't have the experience that lent itself to that. And so I took some risks. I launched a Twitter account in 2008. I launched a blog talking about the intersection of social media, how you can use these tools on the business side of sports, specifically the business of basketball. So I was taking these principles of community building that I was doing at Columbia University in the real world and seeing if they would apply to digital, to where people can gather around a specific interest or topic. And so it was probably a function of being in the right place at the right time, but I ended up getting a press pass to cover St. John's men's basketball program, a Big East college basketball program that I grew up a huge fan of, on my Twitter account. And this is at a time in 2009 when sports journalists were not using Twitter. And Twitter didn't even have native video and photo functionality. You had to use TwitPic and TwitVid to kind of bring in dynamic media to the platform. This is before, obviously, well before it was called X. But that opportunity allowed me to, I was right place, right time. It became a national news story in the New York Times and ESPN and Sports Illustrated. And one of those folks who read the story in the New York Times happened to be the president of the New York Knicks. And he invited me to speak on a panel before a Knicks game. And that ultimately led to me getting a full-time job offer to be the first in-house social media specialist for the New York Knicks. So that's kind of been my journey from childhood into the business.
That's so interesting. It makes me, it really encourages me. And the reason why I say that is because that journey that you just described is literally the journey that I'm going through right now. So obviously started playing basketball. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I started playing basketball quite young, not quite young. I think I would say about 12, 13 years old. And I say this to all my guests. So I started playing in Nigeria with my cousin. My cousin introduced me to the sport of basketball. And our first experience of basketball was actually creating our own hoop and actual ball. Making our ball using rubber bands, making our basketball hoop on our grandma's balcony with like an iron rod bent and nailed onto a wooden backboard, those type of things. And then came over to the UK, played junior on the 18s, and then went to university, played as well. And then the love kind of went away because, like you said, someone should have told me to really focus on the business side, but I didn't know any better. So I went into fashion because I come from a fashion background. My mom and dad were both designers. Back in Nigeria, my mom designs here. So, and then last year, June, met a 17-year-old kid. He challenged me to play against him and his guys. I brought my guys. That ended up becoming what was meant to be 10 people, ended up becoming 25 people there. We paid for it, paid for the indoor course, started the sessions, and then from there, it's just taken off since then. We just said, oh, we can do this every week, and we just kept it going. And then it became something else, and it became something else, and it just kept growing. So even things like when you said you got a press pass to St. John's game, I do the same thing as well. As much as we're a basketball community, I don't limit it just to the community. So if there's, for example, the Big Three Championship that happened there in the summer, I went and got a press pass and got a photographer and a videographer within the community to come with me, and we go out there. I had a camera as well, and we went out there and took content and did videos and pictures and actually posted it. They even have one of our reels on their page as well. So
Incredible.
like, you can never limit yourself when it comes to those type of things. So which is quite interesting that you did say that as well. So that was quite encouraging for me, and I'm sure it'll be encouraging to a lot of people in that journey as well.
Absolutely. If you don't mind taking a quick pause, I want to shut off my text message converse. I thought I
No worries.
answered it, but I failed to do that. Hold on.
No worries.
Let me log out properly here. Apologies.
No worries.
By the way, so you still doing these weekly runs?
So we actually stopped them for a while. They were coming quite costly. However, what we've done now is that we've partnered with 2 different boroughs, so Hammersmith and Fulham and Ealing. So we're now working with them to actually offer those runs to the community in those areas.
Incredible.
So, and they help us with terms of costings, in terms of the gyms, maybe discount on gyms and stuff like that. So it's less costly on us, but also more value to the community as well. But we're doing other things as well, like grants, etc., trying to build that economy within our space first to actually give back out to the young guys and girls who love the game of basketball.
I love it. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention on my journey late in high school through college, streetball.co.uk was one of these daily must visits for me growing up. So
yeah. So funny enough, our first episode is with a gentleman called Gary Maitland. He was one of the players for streetball.co.uk at the time as well.
Yeah.
Like he's about maybe just slightly taller than me. I'm 5'9", he's about 5'10", 5'11". But dude can jump, can dunk, can stay in the air for so long, up and under, everything. So, and he's a trainer now, a professional trainer. So there you go. So yeah, so we've touched on what you do, and we've also touched on your background and the journey that you've had so far. So carrying on from when you started in social media at the Knicks, what was that experience like, and what propelled you to your next phase or your next career in life from there?
Yeah, so the job opportunity with the Knicks was an exciting one. My role, as I mentioned, was social media specialist. That was the title, but the role itself was really, I was an embedded reporter with the team coming through the marketing function. And so I went to every single Knicks practice, every home game. I went to all the regional games that year. So Toronto, Boston, Philly, DC, covered all those games from an in-house marketing and, journalistic perspective, if you will. But the main job really was to build community around the team. We grew the first 1 million Facebook fans for the New York Knicks back in 2010. I was there the day that Carmelo Anthony was traded over from Denver to New York. Met him and the family, for example, at Teterboro Airport when they first arrived. First person to interview Carmelo Anthony. So think about it, we built community around the team, an engagement with fans. And, from a business perspective, it was really around 3 things. How do you drive more ticket sales, drive tune into television, and also to activate their many brand sponsors and partners using social media. It was just an awesome use case and learning experience for me professionally, and also just personally, growing up a huge basketball fan, player, to have that sort of purview and up close view every day of how the Knicks practice and how the games come to life. It was just awesome time. Then after that, I was recruited away to do similar work on the agency side for Nike basketball. So they're at the ground floor and launching Nike basketball on Instagram in 2012. And I remember that whole lead up of like, what's our first 10 posts going to look like? And the job and the role there was very similar. It was about storytelling around all the different major shoe drops. So Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, LeBron James, Kevin Durant at that time were the big signature Nike basketball athletes. And so we would do all of the storytelling on social around each of the colorways for their sneakers that would drop, because all of those colorways are derived from insights about their personal lives, their childhood, their adolescence, their journey. And so obviously the business function there is like building community around the Nike basketball brand to drive more sell-through of their products. But it was an awesome experience. Also kind of dovetail with the 2012 London Olympics. So I got to experience that on social and celebrating Team USA basketball, which is a big Nike basketball property. And then after leaving the agency, it sort of connected to what I currently do. I was launching a startup app at the time, and also just out there freelancing. I continued working with Nike basketball, and then that's when I met Joe, who I mentioned are the initials for JDS Sports. And so started working with Joe part-time. He owned the company 5-Star Basketball Camp, a camp we both went to. And then ultimately the Slam acquisition happened in 2017 together.
When you were at Nike, did you ever work closely with John Ollinger?
Yes, Johnny O. He was a hooper himself.
In Coventry. He was actually my coach at Coventry University as well.
That's a really small world. He's one of the first people I met. So John was on the customer service team initially. That was his first job at Nike. So I got to meet him when I flew out to Beaverton. Great man.
Yeah, I speak to him now. He when it comes to anything to do with marketing, especially with what we do, I literally try and book him onto a Zoom call and literally just have a list of questions that I just bash at me. It's always so helpful. Like even when I was in Coventry, he was still living there because we used to attend the same church as well. So he was very almost like a mentor, like a father figure in that space to me at the time. So it was really helpful in terms of a lot of things growing up, especially in Coventry. So yeah, I'm super grateful to him as well.
And he played pro ball over there, is that right?
Yeah. He was killing it though. He was killing. He was unstoppable. He was unstoppable. He was super unstoppable. And he played with another young guy, Stephen Danso, who's British basketball player as well. And both of them together, unstoppable. They were just He actually helped me improve my game quite a lot as well. Those 7 a.m. workouts.
I was already well washed up by the time I met John, so I didn't even try. I already knew.
So my next question I would go to is first of all, I know you've mentioned it, but I wanted to kind of elaborate a bit more. Where did your full love of basketball come from? Because the fact that you're still working in that space now shows that there's such a huge love for it. And then also, why do you love the sport as well?
So that love, goes back to that childhood in my yard in Brooklyn, and just basketball allows you could play the sport by yourself, right? All you need is a ball, and to your point, it could be a homemade hoop. It could be a homemade ball and a homemade hoop. You don't need much. There's a beauty in simplicity, I always feel like, and basketball offers that simplicity. So that's at its very core. And so when you can sit there in your yard and put up hundreds of shots, but dream, right? And dream and thinking about, this is during the 90s when I was coming of age. And so I just remember too, I was laying on my stomach in my cousin's basement when Christian Laettner hit that iconic shot, Duke, against Kentucky, watching UNLV, Larry Johnson and, Greg Anthony and that team dominate in the 1990 season. So we would be watching this. And this is also the coming of age of all the iconic NBA VHS tapes. Michael Jordan, Come Fly With Me, Magic Johnson VHS tapes. So I would go watch those tapes and then go back out in the yard and try to mimic everything that I just saw. So that is where the love, I think, was really born there. And then obviously it was addressing a pain in my own loss of my sister at that time in my life. So I think it was accomplishing those two things, allowing me to dream, but also to just kind of minimize some of the pain and trauma that I was going through in my life at that time. Then I started playing basketball as a team sport. And if you really want to see the beauty of basketball, the team game is even more beautiful than just being able to dream and play one-on-one or just by yourself in the yard. And so it's truly a team game, and everyone plays a specific role. And I just always enjoyed that as a kid, right? I was a 2 steps too slow point guard, but I always enjoyed setting up the play and getting the assist from a young kid. I never needed to be a scorer, never really wanted to be a scorer. I just love to set up the play, set the table, if you will. So that's really where the love was born, and it stuck with me. And I think, to your point, maybe I think I specialized in basketball too soon in life, and I ended up sort of burning myself out by the time I got to my last year of high school and first year of college.
Right.
The love didn't fade away. Just the idea of like getting up at 5:30 and just getting after it. I don't know, that just went away from me for a while, because I think I was obsessive. Like, when passion falls into an obsession, it becomes unhealthy and it becomes unsustainable. And it also robs you of the joy of why you fell in love with the game in the first place. So stepping away from it, I thought, was super healthy. And again, it wasn't even intentional. It was more, I was just burnt out. I didn't care. But it made me miss it. Like, when years had passed again, it made me miss it. And I went back to why. The question you're asking too is like, why? And so when you have a more healthy relationship with a game, you can enjoy it for what it is. And so that's kind of what it is now. And so it's been a through line in my whole life. First, as like a thing I enjoyed as a child, played competitively, high school, 1 year college. And now it's sort of tied to what I do in my profession.
Amazing. What would you say to a young athlete that has that obsession, and you don't want them to actually go through that whole process of mixing the passion with obsession and then burning out? So what would you say to a young athlete that has an obsession, and how to keep it sustainable now that you know what that looks like now?
The most genuine answer I could give too, and this is not, it's been a part of my journey. I came back to the church in 2015, but faith is my counterbalance to everything, where nothing becomes an obsession, because there's only one number one, right? One center, which is is our Lord, and that gives me a real natural perspective and balance. But as you're talking to a young athlete, it's really finding what is that counterbalance, like putting basketball or whatever that obsession is into its right, proper perspective of life, right? Like, it's a great game. It could do a lot of good, and it's done a lot of good for so many people, myself included. But at the end of the day, it's a means to an end for things. It's not an end itself. So I think you just have to place it in its proper and rightful perspective.
Okay, that's a great answer. And if you don't mind me, I can share mine as well. So
yeah, I would love to hear it. Yes.
Mine is it's always been about people, how I can help people, how I can how can I put it, how I can enable or create something for people to become their best selves, basically. So with the platform that we have, as much as we can do the weekly runs, like I mentioned, but then we can do a podcast. But when we have a YouTube channel now, that it may not have crazy subscribers right now, but as a platform for any young creative to really decide, oh, I want to do a show, I want to create this type of film or whatever. We've got the cameras here. We provide the resources for them to actually make that happen, rather than them having to wait to maybe they have enough money to buy a camera, or they have to pay someone to do it. You can put your money to the side. Let's help you start off, first of all. Helping could also be in that you're in university and you need help with assignments and your degree and stuff like that. Okay, we're connected with, we're part of a larger community, and we have people that work in law, people that work in finance, people who are software engineers. Let's partner you with those guys to really give you that mentorship through your journey, because they've been there. So these are the type of things that we're doing, because I feel like once you can invest into people, and you almost kind of provide a solution to the everyday struggle of having to do things by yourself and not having the support, or thinking that you're not good enough, but then you have that community behind you that can really give you that support and really push you to the limits to be your best, then there's no doubt that you're actually going to be at the top of anything that you do. So our aim is to really build leaders that will be leaders of their whatever industry, whether it's basketball, whether it's entertainment, whether it's music, but they'll be at the top. So that's how we kind of look at people, and that's why we do what we do with Basketball
That's
Nation.
beautiful, man. I mean, that's powerful, and that's what the game unlocks and empowers. Basketball, we always look at this when you go to a community basketball court. It's always been a sort of unifier and a bridge in a community. It brings people from different sides of the community, different generations. Like we always talk about this when you're a teenager, you go to the park. When you would pick up basketball was a real big thing. It's the first time you're playing against grown men, adults, and competing against them, or people that look different than you at that park. And so and you're playing on the same team, and that's what's beautiful about basketball. And it goes all the way back to its inception, right? Like James Naismith, when he applied for his master's degree at the YMC International YMC Training School, which became SpringHill College, his application said the purpose, why are you applying for this program? He said, to win men for the master of the gym. This was like muscular Christianity at the time. And then he invented basketball because he was solving a problem in New England at that time. In the winter, fall was football season and spring was baseball season. And he had these athletes that wanted to do something indoors that was fun and competitive. And he founded basketball. But even in that, and how he created those rules, it was to bring virtue into the gym. So it's beautiful to see you're doing that in a modern way, what you're doing with the podcast and the community you've built.
No, that's powerful. Thank you for that. That's amazing. My next question is going to go around something that we just both mentioned, but we didn't mention what it is mentorship. With yourself, and the reason why I'm structuring like this is because we're starting from the beginning and we're just going along the way. How important is mentorship to you, and would you encourage especially young athletes and people to really take up mentorship, and what's that is that impacted you, if you've had any as well?
Absolutely. Throughout my entire life, whether it was coaches or adult figures in my life that I've looked up to, that I can always glean insights from, who've already lived it, right, who have that life experience, who went ahead and kind of lived it, and they can share both things to avoid, right? Pitfalls or landmines to not step on, but also things that they've done right and that they would recommend to a young person like myself. And so, interestingly, when I was working at Columbia University and I was trying to make that sort of shift into the business of basketball, I reached out to a man who he wasn't a mentor then, but he became a mentor later. His name is Tom Konchalski. He was a legendary high school basketball scout. He called himself, his words, dinosaur of a man. He was a technophobe. He never owned a computer. He never owned a cell phone. And he did all of his scouting reports on a trusty old typewriter, from the 70s. And he just never really evolved, but it didn't matter. All the biggest college basketball coaches subscribed to his 16 times a year newsletter called HSBI Report. For some reason, probably it was providential, I reached out to Tom in 2003, and I actually couldn't get a hold of him because, again, he didn't have a cell phone. He didn't even have an answering machine at his home. So just a really hard to get a hold of person, but I felt prompted to reach out. And so I wrote a handwritten letter to Tom, and a month later, he ended up calling me from his landline to my cell phone, and he gave me advice then that just struck me. It was so simple and easy, which was I was telling Tom I was looking to break into basketball, and I didn't know what that meant. So at the time, I think I was contemplating even coaching basketball. And so Tom was like, there's no substitute for experience. If you want to coach basketball, why don't you call your old high school coach or your old AAU coach and just volunteer your time while you're job searching? And so that was the spark. I was working nights and I was coaching, after school during the day with my old AAU coach, who was also a high school coach. And that was what relit that flame. Again, I had been away from basketball for now 3 or 4 years. And it was, to your point, the people side of it. It wasn't the coaching. It was the mentoring. So Tom was essentially mentoring me without me even asking him. I was asking him for advice, but he was mentoring me. Then I had the opportunity to mentor these young men who are high school. It was a varsity team. And so Tom, ultimately, when I ended up getting into the business, he became just a personal and professional mentor to me for many years until his passing a couple of years ago of cancer.
Oh man.
So I
I'm so sorry.
highly recommend it, having a
Yeah.
mentor.
Yeah. It's very, very important, and it helps. I don't like using the word shortcuts, but it helps to cut down certain things along that journey, along that process as well. Especially for myself, certain things that I've been through, because I only realized what my purpose was last year. So, and there's 17-year-olds that maybe they don't know what they want to do, but hopefully maybe by the age of like 20, 21, they know way before I did, pretty much. So that's amazing that what you just said in terms of like how how Todd mentored you and without him knowing, but rest in peace to him as well, definitely.
Thank you.
So going back to people, especially the younger generation, because I know pretty much what you do within sports, and I will go into that. But how important is, and I ask this to all my guests, how important is grassroots? Because for me, I always believe that the younger generation are the future of the sports. So really, we should be investing in them. Is this something that you're currently doing within your space at the moment, or a part of something that really invests into grassroots and the younger generation within sports?
So the grassroots are so important because that is where the foundation is usually formed, right? These habits and these views of sport in the world, if you will. And so it's extremely important. Unfortunately, in our country, and I'm sure it's probably similar, it's become really big business, right? And so when that happens, a lot of the good, unfortunately, gets, so they're just pros and cons, right? And the pros, when big business comes into grassroots sports, there's infrastructure, right? There's facilities for practices and gameplay and competition, because there's money now, right? So that's a good thing. There's scheduling, there's organization. So these are all good things. On the flip side of that, usually is where some of the vices come in with greed and agendas, right? Adult agendas bleeding into grassroots sports of like parents and coaches living vicariously through their children because of something that, didn't happen in their lives. And so you're sort of, I think this could be a really big con because you don't want to specialize and get too serious at too young of an age, because again, you could it leads to sort of burnout. It leads to, kids just kind of knee-jerk reaction against doing it because it becomes unhealthy, if you will. So I think that's the one counterbalance. You have to be careful out there of like that balance. But grassroots is where it all happens. So having good coaches, good fathers, good mothers, volunteering, participating, teaching, sharing on the learnings of the game, I think that's all really important. And so we don't invest in grassroots sports directly. We're mostly in tech, and we're mostly in like off the field versus on court is where we specialize from our investment thesis perspective. But we do, like I mentioned, we do own and operate 5-Star Basketball Camp, which is a grassroots basketball camp organization. And one thing, 5-Star, even when I went, I didn't like it at the time. It was it was so focused on the fundamentals. And when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, you just want to play, you want to compete. At 5-Star, as an adult now, looking back, the reason why I appreciate it so much is because it was about the right thing, which was teaching the game the right way. And so there was 2 sets of stations, teaching stations every single day, and you'd have to rotate through these stations. And it was kind of like boot camp, which has made it hard. But as an adult, that's what the game is missing. That's what youth sports are missing. It needs to be focused on having fun always above everything, but also just learning the fundamentals of that sport, right? That's what the grassroots are about. And usually those are volunteers. Those aren't paid figures. And so these are heroes. These are people stepping up who are, full-time dads, moms, that have a full-time day job, who are lending their time because it's that important.
Yeah. You mentioned 5-Star again. Quite a lot of us here always wanted to attend 5-star basketball camps. But a lot of us couldn't afford it, unfortunately. But it was super popular. Everyone wanted to be there. I think a few guys did get to go during my time of playing when I was younger. So yeah, it's a huge thing. I still believe it's still huge now. I don't see as much, obviously, on socials and stuff like that, but I do hear about people, like athletes, still going to 5-star basketball camps. So it's not something that's it's still something that's still booming at the moment, which is great. And I'm sure it's inspired so many other camps that have come out through the years also as well, which is fantastic. I wanted to go into the investing side of yourself, the world that you're in now. So my first question around that is, in terms of the companies that you've invested in through JDS Sports, what makes a company viable for investment, first of all?
The first thing we look for, and we typically invest, just to zoom out for a second, we invest in early stage companies, usually at their seed round, between seed and their Series A, which is more of a growth round. And so you're looking at a few things. One is the team, right? Because we know if this business is going to reach its full potential one day, it's probably going to look a lot differently than it does today, being pitched at the seed stage. And so we're really looking at the team at that point. Is this the right founder or co-founders who can take this business and adapt it? Because the market's going to speak when they launch that business, and they're going to have to be adaptive to what the market says about the businesses. So we're always looking at the right team. Are these good people, first and foremost? Are they the right complementary skill sets to complement one another to help them on the journey? One might be more product focused, one might be more finance focused. Then we look at, can they achieve product market fit with their business? Like when the market speaks, is there enough people to buy this product or service, and is it repeatable and scalable in that standpoint? So we're really looking at those core things at its earliest stage to see its viability, to your question.
Okay. And in terms of your portfolio at the moment, which business would you say has been quite successful over the years for yourselves, in terms of, I'll say productivity, in terms of even maybe the range of business that they do as well? Which company would you say? Well,
a couple jump out, if you don't mind. It's hard to pick just one. Our very first investment was a company called Transmit Live. It's an ad tech platform, and we met these guys in the summer of 2018 at its very nascent stages. And so successfully, we partnered with them first. We used their technology when we sold the Slam Summer Classic to Facebook Watch. We were able to generate a live audience by using their technology and syndicating out a live loop of the game to ESPN and to Bleacher Report to build this live audience. So anywhere there was a native video ad unit for like a lookalike audience in sports, specifically basketball, in the month of August, we had a lot of success with that. They've grown that business. It's wildly successful today, working with a ton of great partners across the ecosystem in sports. So they're one from the very day that we've seen since 2018, just really blossom and grow. The second one that's more consumer facing is Status Pro. Two former NFL football player, former college football player, Andrew Hawkins and Troy Jones, who used their experience, playing football. One's a quarterback, one's a wide receiver. And they built the first mixed reality NFL title called NFL Pro Era. And the name of the company is Status Pro. It's a publishing arm that's using virtual reality to bring to life fun, engaging video games. So what they've done in just short order is so inspiring, because they initially wanted to build a training product. When you put on the headset and you put yourself in the quarterback's kind of POV. But then they started thinking bigger, like how do we make this a much bigger opportunity? And so they thought about, okay, we have a training product, but we can also build a viable game. So and they've done it. It's been fun to watch.
That's quite interesting. I keep saying that everything that you speak about always kind of triggers a lot of things with us as well. so within obviously Barcelona Nation, we do have a team. However, those teams also have their own platforms that they've created as well, which is something that we really push. So
Yeah.
the team that deals with our camera, social media, etc., they have their own tech startup, which they do everything from cybersecurity to networking to web design to app design. They're called Recon Tech. But then you also have a design arm as well called We Are Design Nation. So they do a lot of our product stuff. So right now we're actually designing our own first UK sneaker, basketball sneakers.
Okay.
So of us on that because no one else has done it. So we just said, you know what, why don't we just play around and just create something and just do it and just show a lot of the young guys that, listen, if I can do it, you can do the same thing as well. So We Are Design Nation. So they do deal with a lot of that part of things, but then they help us with a lot of our design work on Photoshop, Canva, etc. And then we also work with, when I spoke about the mentoring of connecting with professionals, Pleroma Academy, which is a recruitment company, but they have contacts within banks like Barclays, etc. So those guys are part of this team, but then they also have their own spaces, which then I also can put myself into those platforms and actually support them in that way as well. So it's made pretty much like a conglomerate of platforms to serve the community, should I say?
So
yeah,
platforms.
yes, exactly.
I love it.
So I just wanted to plug them in there a little bit, just to let you know that what you're doing is amazing, and hearing everything that you said is quite encouraging, because sometimes when you start something, you may think, oh, where's this gonna go? You may have a vision, but then the journey always looks different from the vision. But when you hear a gentleman like yourself saying that you actually went through something similar, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going down I'm on the right track, basically. So it's quite powerful to hear. Next question is going to be, I really want to touch into a side that you've really that you focused on in the past, and I don't know if you do that now. Actually, two things. Before I actually ask that question, I noticed that you're quite involved with a lot of community work as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, in the redevelopment of basketball courts. And
Yes.
how did you get into that? And what does that look like at the moment?
Yeah, and this is a big credit to our chairman, Joe, who just has a big heart for giving back. And so that was always just wired into everything we do with Slam and the greater portfolio. But we wanted to formalize that and make it tangible, if you will. And so we launched a fund called Play with Purpose, which is a nice double entendre. And it's a fund where we take our returns on the investing side and we put them to work on the nonprofit side to give back. And so Play with Purpose is a fund that helps nonprofits using sports for social impact. So over the last just couple of years, really, we donated over $2 million to 20 nonprofit organizations. And so one of those partnerships is with a nonprofit called Project Backboard, which, as you mentioned, focused specifically on renovating public basketball courts. For all the great reasons we discussed earlier, because like basketball is a unifier, it brings communities together, can strengthen communities, and especially if it's a place where many kids were playing and the court fell into disrepair from overuse over the years. So when we thought about that, the inspiration for us was at 5-star in its heydays. But these days, 5-star, it's all indoors, right? Like gyms and air conditioner in the summer. But in its heydays, 5-star was founded in the mid-'60s. So, when Moses Malone came to the camp in the 70s and Michael Jordan came in 1980 and Patrick Ewing came that same summer, Chris Mullin, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, when they came to the camp, it was all outdoors. And so you did those stations on the blacktop, you played games on the blacktop. And we said, what's the most authentic way we can give back? Let's renovate outdoor blacktops. And so that's kind of the anchor project initiative within our Play with Purpose fund. That's called 5-Star Gives, and that's our give back. So really a credit to answer your question directly, it's really a credit to our chairman. He has a huge heart. He's a big believer in connecting profits with purpose, and that's why we have Play with Purpose.
That's amazing. I think when I saw that on social media and also on your LinkedIn as well, I was like, wow, this is amazing, because you don't really get to see a lot of that happening in the US. Obviously I don't live there, so I'm sure that there is quite a lot of that happening across the country, but it's great to actually see someone doing that for the community, which is quite powerful.
By the way, this brings me to another point you made of
Yeah.
how you're set up at Basketball Nation. When we set out to do the court refurbishment project in 2021, our goal was to renovate 10 courts in 10 years. Like, it sounded good. It seemed aspirational for us. Fast forward, since 2021, we've already refurbished 20 courts. Like, in just 3 years now. And so that's a function of all like-minded people out there, other companies, other nonprofits that wanted to sort of come together and sort of co-finance these projects with us. And so we have partners on all these projects, not just the artist that gets commissioned to create the beautiful work, but there's other co-financiers who step up, and it gets more mileage out of our dollars and our donations. So to your point, when you make things public out there, like this is what we're setting out to do, you realize that there's a lot more folks just like you are thinking like you. Literally, and that's the power and beauty of community. And so that's something we've witnessed over the last 3 years that still blows me away.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing. And even just adding on to what you just said, my next question is actually around online presence as well, the digital side of everything that we do. How important is that online presence, especially not just, I wouldn't say just for athletes, but even people within the business of sports like yourself, and the impact of it in terms of what that looks like in future years to come. Like, how can that impact basically what we do? For example, business, whether it's sports, whether it's entertainment, whether it's culture, whether it's community, how big and important is that? And the reason I asked that, because I know you did some time in social media as well, which is a big thing in everything, the world right now. So yeah, it'd be great to get that answer from you.
Yeah, and it's funny because it dovetails to our fund and our firm. Our initial thesis when we bought Slam, we put a thesis, like a flag in the ground, and now it's kind of very common, but then it wasn't that common. It was the idea of content plus community is what drives commerce. It was an equation, but it was also a thesis for us. And so we look at this equation of content plus community is what drives commerce transactions in reverse almost. You don't have transactions without trust. And how do you build trust in a 2023 going into 2024 world? You do that by building community, and you do that by being authentic, and you do that by being consistent, and you do that by showing up every day. And so it kind of answers the question of like your online presence. Well, what fuels that? It's the content. And so it's this equation that we run back and through Slam as a business, but it also became a lens on how we invest as well. So we look at founders and we look at teams and companies and brands that take the power of community and harness it in their very specific niche, whatever that niche may be. And so to your point, how present that becomes online is a function of showing up on the right channels that make sense for that business, and just being authentic, being consistent, and producing good content that people want to watch. At the end of the day, putting up content for content's sake is not a great strategy. The content has to be useful and be a means to something, whether it's entertainment, whether it's education. It has to have a purpose and an intent, and it has to hit on that purpose and that intent for it to be good and for it to sort of turn into fans and followers within the community. And then it can't just be a one-sided equation either, right? I feel like brands have to give back. Companies have to give back. Community is not, there was a gentleman, I think his name was Chris Brogan, a famous blogger. There's a big difference between audience and community, and it's which direction the chairs are facing. If you're talking about an audience, they're all facing one way. Community is a circle. And just like the Basketball Nation community, your team is doing a lot of different things, a lot of different roles, but they're all needed for Basketball Nation to be what Basketball Nation is. So So it's very important.
Amazing. Thank you for that. That was quite insightful. My next three questions are almost like questions that aren't related to our conversation, but still related to everything that we do, basically, and basketball. So my next question is, do you have a question for me?
I do. 3 years from now, if Basketball Nation is going to be successful like you believe it's going to be, what is it going to look like? What's going to be different about it 3 years from now than today?
So 3 years from now, we would have actually established our league, because we actually wanted to create an alternative pro league within the UK. So that's something that we wanted to create. So we're actually looking to start even testing that out from next year. So that's our plan. And the pro league that we're looking at is not your typical pro league, but something that involves maybe industries and other communities as well. Maybe we can go to the fashion world and decide and say, hey, Louis Vuitton, Alien Mandor, Nike, do you guys want to create a team and bring it to the league? And let's just create like bragging rights in that space. Because there's a lot of basketball players in the UK and others internationally as well. So it'd be great to kind of bring all of them into that one space. But I've always thought about creating an alternative to everything that's currently out there, whether it's FIBA, whether it's the NBA, or even the British Basketball League. So I think that one of the things that Basketball Nation will look like in the next 3 years is our own pro league. The second thing would be we've been working on creating our own video game as well. It's still based around, that video game is also still based around community as well. So it's something that we want to have established in year 3 years time also. We also want to be able to have invested into at least 20 athletes, whether it's them going to play pro in the US, in Americas, or Europe, or even in the UK as well. So being able to manage those athletes, and also not just managing them just because they need an agent and anything like that, but really investing into them, investing into their families, if they have families at the time, and really kind of pushing them outside of just beyond the sport as well. So taking those 20 ladies and guys and saying, okay, this is a great team for you. This is how much money you can make from here. But however, okay, let's also put some investment into this place. Have you thought of doing this skill? Maybe you're a good writer. Have you thought of even maybe starting to write? We can actually help you with that. So having the right resources to really support the athletes on a 360 level. So that's another thing. And also we want to create our own merch, our own sports brand. Like I said, I mentioned the sneakers as well. So this is something that we actually want to bring out next year. So our first sneaker will actually come out in 2024. Whether it's great or not, we're going to do it and see what the public says. And then, but really and truly, as much as I mentioned all those things, in the next 3 years, we want to be in a space where Basketball Nation is able to support the community of basketball in the UK in any way, shape, or form, whether it's with development of courts or doing the league. But then everything comes down to also money as well. So we're also, everything that we've said is also our way of bringing in more, building the economy of basketball within the UK so that we can actually create these things as well. So yeah.
That's a big vision, but it's a worthwhile vision. And like you said, you got to pick one priority at a time to focus on, and what's going to move. Yeah, what's going to move the needle the most.
Yeah. And I think we're in the process of those things right now, which is why I'm able to mention them. There's so much more beyond that, but those are like sort of 10 years, 20 years, if so. But in the short term, those are things that I know that can definitely be done.
Well,
so yeah,
we got a few big catalysts. One is, I know I'm a huge EuroLeague fan, and I still don't have a team, but I'm hoping that you'll get a team. I know that's a huge thing on their agenda. They want to have a team in London in the EuroLeague, and I think that would be a huge moment, an opportunity. And obviously, the NBA continues to come over to the UK every year to do games.
true.
So the sport is growing.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. So my next question is start, bench, or trade? Start, bench, and trade. Sorry.
Yes.
MJ, LeBron, Kobe.
We're investors in a few companies tied to LeBron. So we're starting LeBron. It goes against my whole childhood, but I'm benching MJ. I'm benching Kobe. Rest in peace. And I'm trading MJ.
Oh my God.
There's no. Oh, that's a tough one.
I would like to let you know that you're the
That's a
first
tough one.
person on this podcast that's traded MJ. Well, I'll say the second person because I would have traded MJ as well because I'm a LeBron fan. So there you go.
What he's doing right now is so special at his age, and the amount of mileage he has on his body. Right? I mean, it's unbelievable that he's putting out these kind of numbers this late into his career and is winning.
Big time.
Yeah,
big time. I would love to have a conversation with him like this as well. I have so many questions for him.
Add that to the year 3 goals. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. And then my last question is, who would you like to see or recommend to come on this podcast?
Oh, from a global perspective, have you chatted with Kevin Coolio, the basketball videographer, photographer? Has he been on? He's based in Paris.
That's crazy. You're the second person that's mentioned that. So I spoke to Jean-Baptiste from Hennessy, and
Yes.
so I emailed him, and he recommended Kevin as well.
So I can link you guys up. Kevin's
he hasn't got back to me yet. So.
I'm gonna link you guys up. He's been to about 75 or more countries to capture the game through through the lens of his camera. But he's done documentaries here in the U.S. One with one of my dear friends, Bobito Garcia, called "Doing It in the Park," all about New York City playground basketball.
Yeah.
I would love to see him on the pod.
Okay, that would be amazing.
And Bobito. Has
stories. I would love to have him on here. I would definitely love to have him on here.
So those are 2.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. Peter, this is the end of the podcast, but not our final conversation. But thank you for taking your time out because I know you're super, super busy. But thank you for taking your time out to actually come and have a conversation with us and speak to us. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone that would watch this episode are going to learn so much. But we appreciate you, and thank you very much over and over and over again for your time. Definitely.
Thank you for the honor.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. Like I said at the start, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Your feedback is very, very vital for us. We want to keep growing for you guys. We want to keep making sure that we're bringing you great conversations and great interviews. So yeah, we're looking forward to see you guys soon. And enjoy this episode. And watch it more than once as well. Don't just watch it once, and watch it multiple times because there will be a lot of things that you would miss just from watching it once. But yeah, speak to you all soon. Coach David out. Peace.